Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the MACE Podcast. I'm your host, Marco Macente, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. This episode is very special as the MACE Podcast is global, going to Dubai, to the Emirates, meeting and interviewing the amazing Roshel Jayasundera. Rochelle is an experienced leader in healthcare management, blending her expertise in consulting, leadership, and commercial acumen to champion patient-centric solutions worldwide. Her persistent commitment to transformative change has impacted patients across emerging markets, reshaping the landscape of healthcare access and affordability. She is a trusted consultant to 20 of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies. Rochelle has spearheaded initiatives that bridge the gap between patients and innovative treatments. His strategic guidance has not only optimized pricing and market access strategies, but has also fostered a culture of collaboration and growth within her teams. Rochelle's dedication to patient-centricity is evident in every facet of her work, from devising comprehensive commercial strategies to nurturing diverse consulting teams across Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, with her insights featured in top industry publications. We're going to discuss the interesting topics such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, cultural behavior, business trends, and what 2024 is bringing to the market. Please enjoy our conversation.
Hi, Rochelle. Welcome to the MACE Podcast. How are you?
Hi, Marco. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. How are you?
I'm fine. And I'm so excited to meeting you, Rochelle, because I'm very proud you are the first guest from Dubai, from the Emirates. So the MACE Podcast is really international and it's traveling the world. So I'm very happy to have you here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Rochelle, I have already shared with the audience your background and your experience, and you are a partner in healthcare consulting, advising pharma industry on how to address the market access, bringing insights and new perspectives when speaking at conferences and congresses across the globe. Of course, one of the topics that I advocate for is the women advancement and empowerment, as I truly believe that gender equity is important if we want to build a great workplace in which we want to work. Can you please share with us your thoughts on women leadership and why is important, in your opinion, the equity and equality in our workplace? Is now diversity, equity, and inclusion important as value? And do you see that company driven and are very driven to pursue the DEI vision within their organization? What do you think?
So when it comes to women in leadership, of course, being a woman leader, it's something that's very dear to my heart. It's something that I continue to foster and encourage in all organizations that I've been through. And simply put, the reason is women leaders and having women in the workforce in general creates an environment of diversity. So by leveraging that diversity, we can then have an environment with more creative discussions, potentially better decision making, and therefore more impactful solutions, right, when it comes to business. I mean, I don't know, Marco, how many times you might have heard the phrase, one size does not fit all, when you talk about a solution, right? In consulting, it's your day-to-day, whatever industry you look at, the focus is one size does not fit all. This is no longer the world that we live in. So if one size does not fit all when it comes to solutions, that means that one size does not fit all when we think about the workforce addressing that solution, right? And that's why diversity, equity, and inclusion is a critical component and is very important to consider. I think organizations are definitely taking this seriously. It's heading the right way. And you can see that we can all make a change. And one thing that's important is that it's not just a buzzword, because it's very easy to put it out. It's fancy to have on your LinkedIn page and so forth. But there's a need for genuine commitment. And that can start with something as simple as relooking at your hiring processes. Are you really creating equal opportunities so that you can have the best workforce? When you look at your current workforce and the way that you engage, is it an open environment? Is it one that fosters inclusion? And if it does, then what you're going to have is an engaged workforce. And we all know that employee retention is something very important to the success of a business. It has a direct impact when you look at financial performance and also shareholder value as a consequence. Maybe just one thing that I do want to share on this is also around unconscious bias. Okay. And I'll share a little anecdote from my team, my former team. So I had two extremely high performing individuals, one male, one female. Yeah. And of course, like in multiple project management cases, you have weekly meetings to discuss what's going on, minutes of minute, and so forth. And it was very interesting to note that the male high performer always expected the female to take notes. And this was an unconscious bias, right? So the way that I went about it was then just allocating rotations for people to take notes so that it became a task for everybody and not one based on gender. So I think similarly, other than the larger initiatives that are ongoing, there are small changes that we can make. And definitely for the companies, it's no longer just a tick the box exercise. It's one where really now it's a core value and it has strategic importance.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for sharing those insights, Rochelle. Of course, I totally agree with you, and I think that we need to clean up those stereotypes that you mentioned, these unconscious bias, because this really belongs to the culture that the company can have. And I totally agree with you also when saying that the retention of the employees is linked to the culture that they can breathe within the organization. So yeah, I'm happy also to see that you were able to address such a kind of concerns and such a kind of topics during your experience. So thanks a lot also for sharing your insights on that matter. Rochelle, let's move on because I have another question for you. One of your strengths is the cross-cultural background that you have. As I mentioned, your roots and your professional and personal experience, which brought you a lot of knowledge, opening new horizons and intuitions. Can you please share with us how this variety and this huge background helps you to be open-minded, agile, and flexible in your daily work?
With pleasure. So I think it's important to share with the audience a little bit about my background. So I was born and brought up in Italy. So I'm Italian, but my parents are Sri Lankan. And I was lucky enough from an early age to go to an international school in Rome, which meant that in my classroom, my friends were from 15 different nationalities at least, people from Trinidad and Tobago, the US. I had one of my closest friends, her dad was half French, half English, her mom's Thai. So diversity, difference in cultures, and different ways of bringing has been really ingrained in me, I would say, from the early days. And this later on in life, I realized, played an advantage in my work. So in my work, I was responsible for bringing access to treatment and more broadly to solutions in enabling healthcare across a variety of markets, from Latin America to Eastern Europe, Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So really spanning emerging markets. And what I soon came to realize is that my background gave me the ability to integrate with these different cultures, perhaps a little bit in an easier manner. Why? Because at a baseline, I had a more open mindset. So to put it into very kind of tips and tricks, right? If I was going into a new country, I would always, of course, understand more about the culture, how does it work? But as a baseline, it's always about being ready to listen actively, being able to have patience, understanding that English is not everybody's first language. And you need to give people time to process things that you're discussing. But overall, finding a common goal or a common shared interest when you talk about personal relationships, because then that helps to build trust. So, I mean, for me, the foundation of business, from my perspective, is always around relationships and not transactional aspects.
Yeah.
So these are a few of my tips and tricks. And then one last thing that I think has helped me a lot is tools that are available, and in particular a book. So I don't know if you've heard about this book called The Culture Map by Erin
Yes,
Meyer.
yes, of course.
It is, and honestly, for me, it was life-changing. Despite my background, etc., it was something that really complemented the way that I looked at life and at cultures, because the whole concept of the book is to look at cultures in relation to one another and not as an absolute truth, right? So if I was to say an example, I mean, okay, we're both Italian, right? So somebody might say, oh, Italians are loud, right? But in reality, then maybe we're not loud. We might be louder compared to, but not necessarily loud compared to Latin America.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always looking at things in relation to one another, which then allows you to make, I would say, more meaningful connections, which leads to better business.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So let's say that you have the spectrum, right, of what the cultures are all about, because you're able to connect and fine tune depending on the stakeholder that you have in front of you, because of course you have the possibility to go above and beyond. Let's say, you know what is happening when seeing people, when understanding their perspectives and their culture. For me, this means really going above and beyond, and really building those kind of bridges that, as you said, really matter and really can make the difference, especially in the business when working with others. So thanks a lot for sharing this, Rochelle. Rochelle, I have another question for you. So let's move on. We have said that you are based in Dubai, and we know how the city plays a pivotal role in the global economic sphere with its dynamics and its influence. What are the trends that you see from a business perspective? How pharma companies approach the business there?
When you look at Dubai, and I would say more broadly the UAE, it is definitely not a secret that this is a thriving environment to be in. You can see that the government has really pushed for innovation, for smart solutions wherever you go. And this is something that obviously attracts multiple industries. When it comes to the pharma industry being heavily regulated by nature, the UAE was a good fit because it also provided a regulatory framework that was, however, agile in the sense that if you have EMA or FDA approvals, this is an excellent territory for the next launch. Yeah. So this was facilitated. Also, if you look at the numbers of the pharmaceutical industry and sector here in the UAE, there is a projection of the industry to reach $4.7 billion by 2025, which is quite substantial for a country of this size. And also you can see that there's an increase in local manufacturing. So definitely the government is playing a big role in this. There's a lot of investment going towards it. You can see that healthcare, innovation, and digitalization of healthcare are definitely key topics here and ones that are critical. So I would say that's one aspect. When you look at the other angle, you know, pharma is obviously conscious about ESG, right? And more broadly, sustainability goals. How do we address these and make sure that you're doing business, to put it in simple terms, the right way? Yeah. And it was a great initiative and a great, I would say, signal, for example, from the UAE that they were able to host COP28 last November, where there was a direct commitment towards improving sustainability and addressing more global issues. So again, another sign of a thriving environment and a country that's committed really to addressing global issues.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for sharing those trends, and I'm sure that the audience will treasure this information now, you know, because more than ever, digitalization, decentralized trials, and all those kind of things after the pandemic are now really important. So let's see how it is going to be, but I feel that you are right, and we will see more trials run and perform even in your area, in Dubai, and in those kind of regions, because of course, this is the future. So thanks a lot, Rochelle, for sharing those kind of insights. Now, speaking about, we shared your experience, we shared your background, and now, if you needed to think about your professional experience, which has been one of your most important challenge you had to face during your career, and do you have any lessons learned that you would like to share with our audience, Roshel?
Well, picking one is difficult, but you mentioned the pandemic now. So I think as a professional and as a leader in my career, the pandemic was definitely one of the biggest challenges because it was a need. And to give you context, I was handling teams across multiple countries in the geographies that I mentioned earlier, right? So for me, it was a big challenge because it was trying to understand how each country was going about the response to the pandemic, which was not so straightforward. And in my line of business, we were looking after servicing patients, ensuring that patients were able to get treatment, which meant another barrier because, are the logistics in place? Are the doctors accepting? Do the hospitals allow visits and so forth? So it was such a challenge because you had to take care of your teams first and foremost, understand their mental health situation, what are their familiar surroundings. A lot of my teams were used to working from home, but now they were being almost imprisoned at home, right? Because you could not leave. So completely different dynamic, while at the same time, you need to continue to push and bring forward the best business result. So it was really balancing the two that was challenging while trying to take care of yourself in the process also. So the pandemic, definitely. Lessons learned, I would say, is to make sure that you are in connection with your teams, especially when they are remote, regardless. So good practice to have weekly check-ins or monthly or platforms. And in today's day and age, it's something that you can do. To give you a sense, I was already on Zoom, Teams, and all those meetings before even the pandemic hit. So for us, the change was just in the interaction with the clients, but internally, it was seamless. The other aspect is, of course, to review business continuity plans and be ready to decentralize them. Because again, one size does not fit all. When we think of corporate, we try and develop policies and procedures that would apply to most. But in this circumstance, it was not possible. And the other aspect is to have a diverse task force. And what do I mean by diverse task force? Here, it's really coming down to traits of the individual. So make sure that you have someone who has a really good eye on risk, right? So, that typical person who always sees a problem in everything, right? You need that person on the task force because they're going to look at something from a different lens. You definitely need somebody who is a problem solver, excellent communicator, and also someone who has the general morale to keep things going. So a bit of a positive vibe while acknowledging the current circumstance.
No, thanks a lot. And of course, the pandemic has been a tsunami, because really it changed the way we were doing things. And now we see even the effects, right, of the pandemic within the business. So thanks a lot for sharing. And I'm sure that the audience will treasure those insights as well, Roshel. Now, we are in 2024 and focusing on 2024. What is it bringing to you, Roshel? Do you have some projects or future initiatives that you'd like to share with the audience?
So each year I tend to have a theme for the year. And I used to apply this more from a professional perspective. In 2023, end of 2023, actually, I took an important leadership decision to kind of take a step back and reprioritize where I was heading with my professional career. So 2024 for me is the year of transformation. What does this mean? From a professional perspective, it means that I want to definitely continue to be part of shaping the access agenda globally. and be more present and vocal on multiple platforms. And I've done small projects like launching roundtable discussions in Singapore on discussing cancer care, and more to come. Another aspect I mentioned earlier is that I'm very, I would say, close to fostering women leaders in business environments and in managing global teams. So I will be onboarding more actively in mentoring different members that are not necessarily part of my organization. So this is something also that I'm exploring. But the third component that's very important for 2024 for me is bringing back the focus also on the personal environment. So, you know, one of the learnings, going back slightly to the COVID-19 aspect, was that there's no work-life balance from my perspective, but what we should strive for is work-life boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so when you're at work, you're fully present at work. When you're in your personal life, you're fully present in your personal life. Now, of course, it's easier said than done. And I think it's important that we are kind to ourselves and not kind of penalizing ourselves if this boundary, you know, stretches a little bit. But ideally, this is something that I'm working actively on. I'm also working with mindset coaches to help me develop that.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. I mean, this can be inspiring also for other people that will be listening to the episode, right? Because it's important to have objectives and goals that, of course, are achievable. But I like the idea to have them set on year each year. So in order that you can, you know, lift and shift, or you can address, or you can adjust your approach based on what you were able to achieve the year before. So thanks a lot for sharing also those kind of insights, Roshel. Roshel, we have ended our conversation. It has been a pleasure to meet you virtually, and I hope that we will be able to meet, who knows, maybe one day even in person. It has been great to share such a kind of insights with the audience. And of course, let's stay connected, because the world is small, and I'm sure that we will be able to meet each other as the pharma industry, of course, is made up by amazing professionals like you, Roshel. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Marco. It's been an absolute pleasure being here on the MACE podcast, and I look forward to staying connected. If you're in Dubai, let me know.
Yes, of course. And you in Italy, of course, just let me know. All the best, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.